I'm Tai Lipan. I teach at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona. I have 3 kids and we come from the Midwest and recently moved, and I am a painter by practice, and so I spend a lot of time in my studio and working in between teaching.
Can you tell us about when in your life you began your creative pursuit and how you found your way to that point?
Sure, I have count myself lucky as someone who's always known what they wanted to do, and so it was always clear to me that I wanted to make work and make art since I was really little, and I luckily had a family that was really encouraging of that, and so I went to my first university to study art, painting specifically. I always knew, even specifically, that I loved imagery and storytelling through images, and so I found painting as my path, and then had a lot of opportunities to study that and finished graduate work and ended up teaching so that I could continue to kind of foster that interest in creativity and image making with my students.
Can you talk about your foundation of inspiration? Is there a most influential person, artist, book, or experience you draw from?
There are so many. It's hard to know where to start in terms of my influences. I love art history and contemporary art, and I'm always looking at artists' work, both for my own inspiration and also to help my students. I find that the place I always want to go when I need help kind of working through some ideas of mine are like the Northern early Renaissance artists. I really love Cranach, and I love Robert Compton and artists like Albrecht Dürer, and just the way that they have these really complex compositions that when you draw from them, you kind of have to like find your way in and then work your way out because it's so complicated. There are so many different paths to take, and I think that's something that's really interesting to me in my work, and so I like to look at artists that are really adept at doing that in theirs.
What's your typical day-to-day studio workspace like?
I work in my bedroom. So I wish I was an artist that had really fancy studio space and could show that off, but I've always found that it's really better for me to have my art be kind of wrapped up in my life in a way that feels like I can move from one aspect of that with my kids into my work seamlessly and not kind of bifurcate those two things, which I think has made it so it's a little easier for me to just kind of like roll in, sit on the floor of my studio. I'm usually making these layered wood cut hand carved pieces, so I sit on the floor and it's really meditative, and I have my paint under my bed, and then it's just kind of caught up in my workflow when I get time in the studio. However, the thing I found really helpful for me in my life to continue with a full-time job and kids is I have this plastic bin of loose paper because something about sketchbooks stresses me out. And so I just take that everywhere with me, to the pool, to camping trips, wherever we're headed. And so I'm always making small drawings as a way to continue thinking. Again, I'm trying to make it a part of my rhythm of life so that if I don't have a ton of time in the studio, I still can move my ideas forward. And then those little drawings usually become a basis for the larger wood paintings that I make when I do have studio time.
And can you describe what you've been working on here at Azule and how the residency is helping you accomplish that goal?
Sure. When I came here, because I don't always have a lot of concentrated studio work time at home and it kind of ebbs and flows, I wanted to do something that was one of the things I often don't allow myself time for. So as I mentioned, I make these tiny drawings and then I typically blow those up into large paintings. But what I don't make time for is more concentrated times on works on paper. And so what I did here at Azule was spend time kind of expanding on some of the ideas I had in my little drawings that I hadn't had a chance to work on, and just give myself the freedom and time to really work the drawings and push them further than I usually get to. Also working with color in the drawings, which isn't something I also get a lot of time with. So my goal was to make 5 large drawings on works on paper while I was here with ink. Another media, water-based media that I don't frequently work with, and just spend some time with that. So 4 of them I think I ended up being able to get fairly resolved in about a week's time. And I plan to frame them together as one big piece and make this carved frame to make them work together. The imagery in them is not what I've been working on at home so much as it's kind of an elaboration on an idea I had when I was in Arizona looking out at these big landscapes. And sometimes there are these strange moments when big rocks pop out of the ground and they look like they're coming from some ancient place. And I was talking to my kids and we were just thinking like, I wonder what's under there. What if this, as it goes underneath the ground had all of this other stuff going on? Or let's imagine a world in which this, what's happening underground. And so I really love fossils and artifacts and ancient dwellings that I'm seeing so much of, having moved to Arizona 2 years ago. So I just made these 5 drawings about that idea and expanding on the idea of like, what's under there, as my kind of thematic approach for this work. So this is the small drawings that I was working on when I first came here that I thought I was really interested in, this idea of what's going on underneath these really interesting structures that come out of the ground and sometimes look like they turn into sand. And so I started doing these loose drawings right before I came here. And then I think this is an event that I saw in the landscape that I used in combination with this other image to form the first painting I started working on here. And really this was something I saw when we were going on a road trip to California, and the mountains looked like they were sewn together with this pipe of some sort, and it was so strange. And so I often work from like memories of things or just imagination. I don't usually have like image sources. And so I just made this drawing and liked the idea and the memory of it. And then this is kind of loosely based on the dwellings of Walnut Canyon, which is like really near my home. And I think that those are this really interesting structure of these homes that are sort of underneath this space that I had seen. And so I used those to make this painting where I kind of combine the 2 events and also built in some like fossils, which is work related to some work that I have done prior to this. And so this one also has these sort of fossil structures at the bottom and just sort of stairs stepping down. This one I thought it would be interesting to think about like a whole city under the ground and what that would look like with these little glowing windows. And then thinking about, this is actually from an old drawing that I had worked on that was sort of about saving and abundance and this idea of harvest. And so I combined those ideas and experimented with that. This one is from an idea of a drawing from Monument Valley, where they definitely have these strange structures popping up that look like cathedrals sort of. And so I sort of tried to make that come down into this ground space and explored that idea of these rooms. And then this one, it got really weird. And sometimes when you're working in thematic approaches, it's sort of hard because you want to sort of take your original idea and expand on it with these different tangents and pathways, because you never know which thing is going to lead you to your new work. So this piece is very weird, and I was kind of out of ideas. It's the last thing that I did when I was here. And I actually took an old drawing that had this like same layered structure and turned it upside down or on its side. And I just kind of played with drawing invention into this structure that was already set in my drawing. So this one has kind of the repetition of the green tubes from the first drawing, kind of bringing those back and thinking about what if these were also underground and sort of weaving their way through this lost city feeling. So that's the work that I've been doing here, kind of exploring new techniques, new media, and larger works on paper. And then my plan is to kind of take wood, as I mentioned, this isn't really that connected with the work that I make at home materially, which is usually all carved. And so I thought it would be nice. I like these together. So if I show the work, I'm thinking of maybe making a big wooden frame for all of them together and then carving these kind of in sort of rock-like columns in between so that they can all be read as one big kind of series together. So that's something I'm kind of kicking around as well. So that's the primary work I've been working on here. And then I've also been doing like little drawings of some things that are related to Azule. And on the table, I have some things like a little Azule drawing and then some experimentations of what I'll probably work on when I go home. So I think it's really good to, even if you have like a very consistent idea of what you want to be doing in your work, to still be sort of investigating and having these sort of like relief breaks where if you get an idea, you still follow that lead in some small way and track it, so that you can keep moving forward and not get stuck, because otherwise sometimes for artists when a body of work ends, it's really hard, or a residency ends or whatever, it's really hard to figure out what to do next, and that can be hard. So I try to give myself a little foothold in like what's next or what could be as I'm working on a kind of set system.